86%. Have your kids come home from school recently complaining of having a different substitute teacher each and every day? Or maybe there's no teacher at all, and your kids are put on a computer for personalized learning with an adult monitoring them with one eye on class and one on her phone. But without a consistent adult in front of students, education can't happen. Different adults mean different rules, different expectations, and inconsistent academic content. Therefore, there's no real structure and safety is compromised. The Russian roulette of changing expectations not only causes academic harm, but anxiety. According to some reports, as many as 86% of school districts are reporting a teacher shortage. It could be one teacher or two, but there's a shortage. And that's not okay for the simple fact alone. Kids deserve some form of consistency just to make learning possible. Every shortage is unique, and the teacher shortage is complex. In this episode, we're going after one question. How were we complicit in the current teacher shortage in the lapse of historical knowledge? We're going to explore how the two are linked. Okay, we're going to look at one simple element that could be contributing to the teacher shortage, and that's teacher preparation. We're going to dive into the praxis test. The total 46 dots that you see here represent the 46 states across the country where aspiring teachers must pass the praxis test in order to receive their license. The praxis measures content knowledge and knowledge of pedagogy. But according to an article in Education Weekly titled "You Are More Likely to Pass the Bar Exam Than the Elementary Praxis Test," written by Madeline Will in 2019, fewer than 50% of aspiring teachers pass on the first try. The green dots represent the percentage of teachers who don't pass the first time. And of those aspiring teachers who don't pass, some give up on teaching altogether. Now, according to the National Council for Teacher Quality, aspiring teachers who don't pass often struggle with social studies. As you can see here, it covers American history, geography, and world history. This all seems basic, right? Why such a struggle? I blame it on the policy. The authors of policy are the authors of focus, reality, and priorities. In 2002, George W. Bush signed the No Child Left Behind Act into legislation, putting more focus on high standards, high accountability, and high stakes testing in reading and math. Then Barack Obama strengthened it by signing the Every Student Succeeds Act into law. However, neither piece of legislation emphasizes the importance of social studies. Just look here. No mention of social studies or history. Was this on purpose? I have no idea, but it's intellectual and cultural negligence. Seeing that states aren't accountable for social studies under federal law, I went through the education websites of all 50 states and found that only 12 mention anything about social studies and have accountability systems or assessments for students in kinder through 8th grade. The 12 dots that you see here represent those states. The colors are different as there was no clear trend as to whether they were Democrat or Republican states in the last presidential election. Now, if an assessment system is created to inspect what you respect, then clearly social studies is not respected. Again, the authors of policy are the authors of focus. So now, let's imagine a 4th grade student. She dreams of being a teacher. However, she attends a Title I school. They don't have a lot of money. And they're only really focused on reading and math because that's what the district tells them to focus on. Social studies happens during the last couple of weeks of school after state testing has happened, but it's not too much. Then, when this child goes to college as an aspiring teacher, she does okay with her education classes, but fails a praxis because of the social studies portion. Not because she's not smart, or not because she's a bad test taker, but because she never learned the material when she should have in elementary school. And now she won't teach. And she has to break her parents' heart because she can't have the future that she's been planning on. So were we complicit? Yeah, it looks that way. From a cultural perspective, large numbers of the population may not be learning basic history and social studies. As such, we lack a common story to anchor us in reality. History tells us of the glories, tragedies, and mistakes we've made as a people. It unites us and binds us. It helps with critical thinking. Without these stories and facts that history provides, people may be easier to manipulate. Ultimately, this could lead to divisiveness and anxiety because you just don't know what's real. Just look at all the unrest. These kids protesting against everything, they may not even have basic knowledge about history and are just caught up in the mosh pit of internet memes. And we criticize them, but it looks like we may have actually caused it. Alright, let's show some courage and summarize. How complicit were we in the teacher shortage and the lack of historical knowledge? Very. Now, not for the whole shortage, but at least some of it. Were there gaps that pay? And can the intervention district of consultants fill them? Absolutely. Because the kids that didn't learn social studies in elementary school, they can pay for a Praxis tutoring center, but it's not the same. Remember, there's always some service, nonprofit, or consultant ready to fix the gap. Tutoring is okay, but it's not the same thing as learning about history over time. The gap created by the system can be filled by the growing market, but it's not the same. We should get it right the first time. Maybe your taxes are creating a gap in history and you haven't even considered it because you trust the experts. If I were you, I'd double check. Are there any courage gaps to fill? Yep. Parents, ask your kids about basic historical knowledge and visit your state's website. Administrators, have the courage to ask your students about social studies. Policymakers, consider creating a humanities test instead of just ELA. Use a DBQ to assess writing and knowledge mastery in history. Administrators, again, consider adding a content knowledge assessment to the staff interview process. And if there's a gap, work with the teacher and coach to set some goals up. And don't shame them. You may have been the problem and not taught social studies when the new teacher was in elementary school. Get your courage on.